Welcome to your Actives Tech Brief podcast. My name is Luca Bertuzzi, your technology editor. This week, we take a closer look at the European Cyber Solidarity Act and how it fits into Europe's cybersecurity strategy. For an overview on all things technology in the EU, sign up to our free newsletter or visit the website youractive.com. This is your Actives Tech Brief podcast. Today, I'm joined by Iva Tasheva, cybersecurity leader at CYEN, and Francesco Bordone, manager for cybersecurity policies at the European Cybersecurity Organization. Hello, both.
Hello.
So, Iva, let me start with you. Last week, we have seen the Cyber Solidarity Act presented by the European Commission. How do you see this proposal in the context of the European cybersecurity strategy?
The Cyber Solidarity Act is just one of the big European cybersecurity puzzle. It is the latest piece that we are following with lots of interest, but it would be decisive what is in this piece specifically. Why? Because the essence of the EU Cyber Solidarity Act will be the European Cybersecurity Shield. So Shield Up is a very interesting campaign that the US also has launched last year, and it is basically showing the readiness of the EU to go to the next level in cybersecurity. It's not just something we speak about, we fear, but we are ready, we have the tools, and we are serious about protecting ourselves. What we will have in practice is the cyber emergency mechanism and the cyber incident review mechanism. This is a typical recommendation I would give as a cybersecurity consultant to my companies. Cyber resilience is not only about measures. Cyber resilience is about making sure that when you are attacked, you respond correctly, so an incident stays an incident and doesn't become a crisis or, let's say, a disaster for you. And also, when you have an incident, it is an opportunity to learn. What has happened, why was that allowed, but also with intelligence. And here I think is also the key for EU to look at the big picture. What does this incident mean for Europe? Is it isolated case? Is it a pattern? Is it systematic? What is really the objective behind? This all could only happen if the EU puts together the resources, the cooperation, the mechanism of member states, but also allows the role of ENISA to contribute to put this denominator that does the analysis. And now also an important element that is more operational, maybe to those of you that are not following cybersecurity specifically, would be a new element, but I think is important to understand the SOCs, the Cyber Operation Centers. So those are machines, I would call it like this, because you have insight, working technology, AI, different detection system, log analysis systems, working together through defined scenarios with people. So those cybersecurity experts that are very scarce on the market, we have to use them to the full potential and making sure that they serve not one individual company, but also through national or cross-national or international SOCs. They are also able to contribute with their expertise analysis of the information gathered by tools and analyze what is going on, what is happening, are we under attack, what can we do, what should we do, also improve our response. And this shows that the EU is continue to invest, so deploy its cybersecurity strategy. Those initiatives, they are usually interesting for people interested in policy like us, but they're very interesting for the industry because they would also materialize in specific projects, in specific funding, in opportunities to actually develop more interesting tools and collaboration that would improve the cybersecurity. And now, what I also wanted to mention is that for me, as a cybersecurity expert, we usually think of cyber resilience or cybersecurity in different steps and maturity. So, in the beginning, you would have to identify what you want to protect, and this we already have at the EU level. We know which is our critical infrastructure, we know which is our essential service providers. We also need to protect, and with this, we have a multitude of regulations that implement specific security measures as well as investment in member states to improve their cyber capacity. And now we are moving to the next step, which usually companies find very, very difficult. And it's very good news to see that the EU is getting this maturity to go towards the detection and the response side. And this is a very positive news for European cybersecurity.
Thank you, Iva. There are, of course, a few elements to unpack there. Francesco, let's start with a reaction from the private sector about this proposal. There is a lot of talk at the EU level about having a closer collaboration with companies, and the Cyber Solidarity Act puts forth this idea of creating a cyber reserve of trusted service providers. What's your view on all of this?
Connecting also to what Iva said before, I would say that this is very positive news, that actually the European Commission would like to have a cyber reserve, a sort of a group of firefighters who can be called in case of an attack. From a private sector perspective, this is surely a good opportunity, because companies, if they are certified, they can actually be part of this cyber reserve, and they can provide their services and gain a lot of visibility and have opportunities to apply for tenders all over the EU. So actually, it's really important from a company perspective, but also if we zoom back and we look at the, let's say, cyber scenario globally, we see that also with the war in Ukraine, and before also when there was the attack in 2007 against Estonia, the public-private partnership is always the best solution, because at the end, the public sector and the private sector, they cannot act alone. They always need to cooperate. And by this collaboration, if this is done in the right way, actually we can obtain a lot of good results. So for me, the opportunity to have a cyber reserve is surely positive, and it's good that thanks to the recent cyber attacks, as I said, in Ukraine and Estonia, Europe is, let's say, getting stronger and understanding this importance of public-private cooperation. And this is also good news, because in Europe, actually, we have very good companies that are very active in cyber, and this can be a good opportunity for them to gain some visibility. Here, everybody knows the big players globally, but it's also important to give the opportunity to European companies, and especially startups and SMEs, to gain visibilities, gain the opportunity to have public tenders, and actually help governments to sort out incidents, cyber incidents, and make sure that they don't become tragedies and disasters. So, yeah, from a private sector perspective, I would say this is definitely encouraging and going the right direction.
Right. So Francesco mentioned the idea that these trusted providers must be certified to enter the cyber reserve. And we have seen that cybersecurity certification at the EU level has not been without controversy, especially for what concerns the limitation of participation of non-European companies. Iva, can we expect the EU to go into a similar direction here? And if so, which approach can we expect? Can we expect only limitation to high-risk vendors, so-called high-risk vendors, as it was the case for 5G, for example, or to any non-European company to take up these very sensitive tasks?
Yes, so it's there is in fact specific criteria according to which the companies would be selected to become part of the cybersecurity reserve, and this, of course, would be defined according to the government objectives, but being a European company is not on the list. What I would think of certification, obviously, always is a mean to filter, to select, to apply specific criteria, and it comes with its time to develop certification framework, which turn out to be particularly challenging for EU cybersecurity certifications case. So we can imagine it won't be very easy for this certification scheme, but it also comes with time and efforts from the companies to go through the process and to certify. But the objective here is not to limit companies out. I think the objective is to have at least a speed dial trusted, already vetted partners that you could rely on in emergency situation. So we all know that contractual arrangements or public tenders take a lot of time, and this is not the right mechanism to bring in partnership in an emergency or cyber incident situation. We have seen in different countries, regions. I work with some also European projects where you have different, would not call it certification, but vetting programs for suppliers of cybersecurity services with two objectives. First, to make sure that there is some sort of a list that you could quickly pull experts based on their expertise that they have submitted, but also that you could be more at ease about spending public money on companies without having to go through a very lengthy process, because you would do that at once. So to me, this is necessary, this cyber reserve, to be able to pool the resources necessary in a quick manner, an emergency situation, all by respecting, the clean and trustful way of making this, so without exposing public resources or without exposing sensitive information without due process. So in a way, you just shift the due process left, as we like to say in security, early on, so that you don't have to deal with it in emergency situation. I think if we all became almost immunologists and vaccine experts over the COVID crisis, so if you think that the EU would have had kind of a vetted procedure for they had actually this emergency procedure. Without this emergency procedure for vaccine, you wouldn't have had any vaccine on time to actually save lives. This is the same here for cybersecurity. Without having already approved list of experts, of companies, you won't just be able to act on time.
And going back to you, Francesco, you mentioned that if done correctly, public-private partnerships are usually beneficial. I guess that's a big if. So we have seen that, for example, on cyber threat intelligence sharing, the EU is much behind the United States, but also NATO. And sometimes it's not entirely clear what private companies have to gain when collaborating with the public institutions, or if they can even trust the intelligence they share to remain confidential. So, how do you think the Cyber Solidarity Act can help address all of that?
Thank you, Luca. Well, this indeed is an excellent question because it's not easy to provide an answer. I would say that in the cybersecurity world, let's say almost everybody understands the importance of sharing a CTI, because everybody understands that if you share CTI with other entities, you are making sure that they also can act on this CTI. They can use this information to actually prevent attacks against themselves or against potential clients or against other companies in which they are in contact throughout the supply chain. So let's say the idea is widely accepted, I would say, that sharing cyber threat intelligence is important. But then it comes down to practicalities. And it comes down to, as you said, a matter of trust. Trust is essential in sharing CTI because when you receive a cyber attack as a company, you normally have access to a lot of information. You have access to information of compromises. You have access to different sort of informations, what kind of attack was carried out, what effect it had on your network, and so on. So this is extremely valuable information. And if you share it with somebody else, of course, everybody else, like the person we are sharing to, can learn from you, from this attack, and can learn how to better protect themselves. But the issue is that when you share this, you're also exposing yourself a little bit, because you're also showing something of how is your network infrastructure, what are your assets, what has been damaged, and so on. So normally you try to anonymize it in a certain way, but then the more you anonymize it, the less useful it is for the recipient of this information. So normally CTI sharing works very well for small communities where basically everybody knows each other. It's difficult to scale trust, let's say, on a wide level. So another method that we need to keep into account is that trust cannot be forced, cannot be imposed, and the CTI sharing happens only if people really feel the need to help the community. You can use legislation, for example, like the NIS2 and the Cyber Resilience Act, to ask companies to make reporting. But you will never get the full picture if you just ask companies to be compliant and tell you what kind of attacks they had. You need to sort of encourage them to share willingly, and this is something that takes time, because you need to build a community, and it takes time because people usually don't want to say that they have been hacked or they have been compromised in any way. And then another point I would like to make is that sharing CTI should be a two-way communication. So ideally, everybody should benefit from sharing CTI. So between the public and the private, there's a lot of CTI, and also another conversation can be made on what kind of information we have to share. But ideally, if everybody is in the same boat and the private and public sector would like to share CTI, they should do it both ways. So both the private should communicate its own CTI to the public, and the other way around, in order to make the whole community more resilient and more secure. It's ultimately coming down to that. It's a matter of relationship, trust that you need to establish over time. You need to encourage companies to share, and you cannot just force it top down. And it has to be a two-way communication in which both parties can actually learn a lot from each other and help each other.
Iva, giving you the floor, I think that Francesco struck a nerve here also when he said about the thing that trust is easier in smaller communities, and I think that's the whole idea behind the the regional security operation centers, the SOCs. So do you see this as a launching pad to get this level of maturity in the European cybersecurity community to start sharing cyber threat intelligence first on a smaller scale and then building up?
Smaller scale is important because what Francesco indeed mentioned is the trust issue. But what I would like to bring as another dimension is not only the size, because it could be one-to-one discussion, but if it is company to government, it's intimidating. We cannot expect companies to feel completely open, especially in a complex regulatory framework with many obligations, specifications, to be completely open and share information as it comes to governments. What could work, and we have seen already the seeds in Europe, is more sectorial discussions where peers in a sector, whether it's we have ISACs, for instance, Information Sharing and Analysis Center, sectorial ISACs for energy, for railway, for aviation, for financial services. So these to me are elements and compositions which are at the moment the most trusted, let's say, community where one can expect this kind of threat information to be flowing. But coming back on the topic of the cyber operation centers, indeed, as I said, it is a machine, and the machine needs input to give any output. And this is one of the key factors of success of the SOCs, whether they're it doesn't really matter if they're company sectorial or national, transnational, if they have access to information that is workable, so it's in a format that they can use easily, that is complete, so that it doesn't misrepresent the situation, that is live, so it is relevant for today, for now, what is happening. This information needs to be floating into the SOCs for them to bring the value. The value of a SOC is the analysis supported by tools. Again, here it would depend how ambitious, and I have no doubts that European companies are very innovative. We would come up with a lot of AI solutions, machine learning. It is very, very interesting case actually for cybersecurity to implement these AI tools for security operation centers, for monitoring, for analysis, whether it's on the attack surface, whether it is analysis on the events, so some abnormal behavior that could trigger some alerts. So this is actually the very exciting part of SOC, is the analysis part and how people can employ and create technology to support them. And last but not least, I really see it as a machine, the SOCs. So you have the input, the threat intelligence, and here again, Francesco spoke about the issue. We have to fix this issue, otherwise the reminder would, we say trash in, trash out. Analysis, this is the real exciting part of the SOC, and I'm really looking forward to see how it develops. But then there's the output. So what do we do next? Do we have good machinery communication system? Do we know who to warn of what? Would these people and companies and governments take action? That are many questions that we would see how it evolve. My initial feeling is it would not be as easy in the beginning. It would be a lot of learning on the go, but I think at this point of time we have enough threats to keep us on our toes. We are definitely investing, trying our best, and I hope we would also increase the overall level of maturity of the industry and of the governments, so that when there is an incident, there is an action from their side, they would be prepared also to take it on and apply it. So indeed, to sum up, there are at least 3 steps for our machine to work: the input, the analysis, and the output action.
Thanks, Iva. I think what we're still missing from the picture is the sort of tension that we see between Brussels, that is trying to centralize cybersecurity capacity in terms of operations and intelligence sharing, and the member states that are trying to resist this centralization trend. We have seen a non-paper ahead of the Cyber Solidarity Act with words of caution to the Commission, and we have seen how coldly the joint cyber unit was initially welcomed and eventually faded away in the EU discourse. So, Francesco, how can there be solidarity in the cybersecurity field if every country has its own way, its own priorities, and why should things go differently this time compared to the joint cyber unit?
I cannot answer completely because it's more a question for the public sector, of course. What I can say is that there are different ways to look at cybersecurity. You can look at cybersecurity from a market perspective, from a security / law enforcement perspective, or from a defense perspective. So, of course, member states naturally tend to keep security, law enforcement, and defense very close to their area of competence, while the EU should and tries indeed to work more on the market aspect of cybersecurity. So, for example, the Cyber Resilience Act went exactly in this direction to try to regulate the market on cybersecurity. And then I would like to add that member states are really collaborating between each other in several different ways. We don't need to forget that there's the NIS coordination group, the CSERT network, the Cyclone network. Then at the council level and Commission, they have the blueprint on cyber for large-scale cyber attacks. There will be this network of SOCs. So there are many actual opportunities for member states to cooperate with each other and cooperate at European level. And then, of course, it's a matter of competence between the European Commission and the member states, who does what. And we need to keep in mind that, yes, member states, as I said before, they tend to act in their own sphere of competence, above all the security one and law enforcement and defense. But I hope that in the future at European level, actually, we will manage to get a better coordination. And it looks like with this Cyber Solidarity Act that is going the right direction, that there will be more cooperation and solidarity at European level. And also, if we put into the framework the EU policy on cyber defense, this communication that came out also fairly recently, it goes in the same direction to have cooperation even in the field of military cybersecurity, which was unheard of before, because military sector is a very, let's say, special one. And of course, very difficult to create a cooperation there. But the European Defence Agency, the European Commission, the European External Action Service actually pushed forward the idea of cooperating among the CSERTs of military level and also between the military sphere and the civilian sphere. So I would say that I'm very optimistic for the future, because even if it's difficult, it looks like we are heading in towards the right direction.
I think that gives us a positive spin to our wrap-up. Francesco Bordone is Manager for Cybersecurity Policies at the European Cybersecurity Organization. Iva Tasheva is Cybersecurity Lead at CYEN. Thank you both. That's all we got time for this week. Don't forget to sign up to our free Tech Brief newsletter to stay on top of tech news and digital policy developments in the EU and beyond. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast published on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Amazon Music. This episode was produced with the technical help of Avi Chiori. I'm Luca Bertuzzi, and thank you for listening.